Breaking news out of the NFL. Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars have agreed to a 5-year, $275 million contract extension with $200 of it guaranteed. That's been confirmed by our Jonathan Jones. The deal will pay him an average of $55 million per year, tying Joe Burrow for most in NFL history. Jaguars selected Lawrence with the #1 overall pick in 2021. Been the starter in Duval since day one, throwing for almost 12,000 yards and 58 touchdowns in 3 seasons. And for more, welcome in former NFL vet Leger Douzable and CBS Sports NFL draft analyst Ryan Wilson. Leger, we knew this was coming for Trevor Lawrence, but what do you make of the deal that he has just signed, the amount of money that he's agreed to with the Jaguars?
Yeah, Hakeem, this is damn if you do, damn if you don't, right? Because if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and you wait, then you're going to potentially pay even more. Right now, we know there's another quarterback that's just a little bit down south, and Tua Tagovailoa, who's looking for a new deal as well. So if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, yes, this is a lot of money. It looks like he's going to be making upwards to $55 million a year. But that quarterback number is only going up for a guy that they see as their future franchise of this team. When you look at Trevor Lawrence, right, inconsistency has been the key when it comes to him. Just last year, they went to the playoffs. This year, coming into 2023, everybody assumed that they would potentially maybe even be the #1 seed in the AFC when you looked at how their schedule panned out. But the inconsistent play was what bit the Jacksonville Jaguars. We knew Trevor Lawrence was beat up a little bit, but just turned the ball over way too much, had 21 total turnovers. And if you look at his career in totality, 60 turnovers, Hakeem. You can't win football games when you turn the football over, but he has high upside. The kid can do it all. Like I said, when we saw last year, him lead Jacksonville down that stretch, fight their way into the playoff, win the division, get a home game, a ridiculous second-half comeback versus the Chargers, and then that Kansas City Chiefs game in the divisional round, they had them on the rope. And a lot of that had to do with Trevor Lawrence. So if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, it was you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because if you don't pay him, and he goes out and balls out, you're going to pay him so much more money.
Yeah, it sounds like, Leger, that the Jacksonville Jaguars are trying to avoid what Jerry Jones likes to do and waiting to the very last minute to sign players at a premium. But you said 2 things that I think encapsulate perfectly what's going on with Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. The inconsistencies that have plagued his career. You can partly blame Urban Meyer, but the last few seasons have been Doug Peterson, and he has been up and down. And the other thing is, you talk about the untapped potential, how good he can actually be. There's a reason he was the #1 overall pick. But in terms of those inconsistencies, because when you talk about guys like Tua Tagovailoa and Jordan Love, who also are going to get paid probably pretty soon, Akeem. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to with Trevor. He threw 14 interceptions last year. He had 21 turnovers, which is 3rd most after only Sam Howell and Josh Allen, 2 different quarterbacks there. And 10 of Lawrence's turnovers came on 3rd down, which was the most in the NFL. Can you fix that? Obviously you can, but if you want to get to the next level, start winning playoff games, making deep playoff runs, Trevor knows this as well. He's got to take his game to the next level. And I think the AFC South is going to be probably secretly one of the most competitive divisions in football. They had to sign Trevor. They had to pay him $55 million a year. That's how it works with the quarterback position. But there's a lot of room left in terms of him to grow and become that franchise quarterback they need him to be.
Well, here's a guy who didn't miss any games in high school and college, right? And then he has this incredible streak going in the NFL. And we saw him, Leger, get banged up. I mean, several times last season. In fact, week 6, knee sprain. Week 13, high ankle sprain. Concussion in week 15, followed by an AC joint sprain in week 16. So a lot of the inconsistencies, can they not be a result of the injuries to Trevor Lawrence?
They could be that, and a big concern for them also, Hakeem, was the offensive line, but they tried to rectify that. They brought in Mitch Morse from Buffalo, right? They also extended some of their guys in the interior of the offensive line and also on the offensive tackle position. So they've really tried to fortify that offensive line. I think the GM, Trent Baalke's done a really good job of literally giving Trevor Lawrence everything he needs to succeed. We talked about the offensive line. You talked about him being banged up. He was under duress a lot last year. So they fixed the offensive line, right? They brought in Gabe Davis from the Buffalo Bills to pair with Christian Kirk on the outside. Then they went and got him a 1st-round receiver in Brian Thomas, a guy that can really blow the top off the defense. So, yes, they had to pay Trevor Lawrence, but there's also no excuses now for Trevor Lawrence. You talked about some of those inconsistencies, Rye, especially down the stretch last year. This was a team where it was opposite of the 2022 season, where they kind of fought their way in the back half and got into the playoffs. Well, they had a commanding lead in that division, and then Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars struggled down the stretch, and it was A lot to do with him turning the football over is why they lost games. Matter of fact, in Week 18, they still had a chance when they went on the road to Tennessee to play the Tennessee Titans in Nashville. If they won that game, they get into the playoffs, and they couldn't get the job done. Yes, Trevor Lawrence was banged up, but in Hakeem, in football, you know this. If you're out there on the field, you're considered healthy. So he has to take his game to the next level. They've also rectified a lot of those issues that they've had to make sure he's had success. Now the ball is in Trevor Lawrence's court.
I think that's exactly right, Leger. And yeah, Akeem, I think there's something to the fact that perhaps he wasn't 100%, but Leger can tell you better than I can. By about week 11, no one's 100%. And when you look around that division, they lost to Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis pretty early on. They won the same amount of games, 9, the Colts did, as the Jaguars, with Gardner Minshew. So that gives you some indication. That points in part to Shane Steichen doing such a great job dialing up plays and how good that team played without him. I think you could also argue that Doug Peterson needs to do a better job of putting Trevor Lawrence in position to have some success. And I think there were times last year where the offensive coordinator and the head coach weren't necessarily on the same page, but those are just excuses. At the end of the day, if you're making $55 million, as Leger has alluded to, there are no more reasons for excuses. You have to go out there and perform. We know what the Houston Texans did last year. Again, a team that was expected to win 3 football games, made their way to the playoffs and won a playoff game with a rookie quarterback. And the Tennessee Titans are going to be better. Will Levis year 2, Brian Callahan, the play caller, comes over from Cincinnati where they had so much success with Joe Burrow. The pressure's on in Jacksonville, and I think if this team falls short of expectations, there's going to be a lot of questions. It's going to start with Doug Peterson, and the very next question is going to be directed towards Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, this lines up to be a uber competitive division. Sometimes it hasn't been in past years, and this division now is looking even more stacked than it once was. When you consider the Texans are the clear favorites to win the division, I mean, Leger, some people in the offseason here are talking about the Texans competing for a Super Bowl this year. So the expectations in Houston are huge. In terms of the Jaguars in this division, what's the outlook for them competing now with a favorite in the Houston Texans, who are on the rise here, and consider the moves they made this offseason?
Yeah, Hakeem, if you're a Jacksonville Jaguar, you got to love the spot that you're in, because last year they had all those expectations, right? Nobody saw the Houston Texans coming. So if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you're thinking we could be what the Houston Texans were last year, right? Nobody believes in us, right? Everybody thought we were going to be good last year. Their expectations, but they're not as high as the Houston Texans. As you said, Hakeem, a lot of people think they'll compete with the Kansas City Chiefs to win the AFC, talking about the Houston Texans. So when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you like nobody talking about you. You put your head down, you work, right? Trevor Lawrence, you just got this deal. You got to prove the team and the GM right, because they just gave you $55 million for each season. So if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you were 1 game away from the playoffs. You went to the playoffs the year before. You got to love the spot that you're in. You could be that sneaky team in the AFC that nobody sees coming.
Yeah, and when you look at the list of players making this sort of money, Leger and Akeem, it is interesting, because I do like Trevor Lawrence, but I don't love him. Joe Burrow is currently also makes $55 million a year. I think we're taking Joe Burrow over Trevor. Then it's Jared Goff. Jared Goff had a resurrection going to Detroit. Justin Herbert, maybe there's a conversation we had there, but I think Justin Herbert probably has more upside. Then Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts to round it out. And look, you have to pay Trevor Lawrence. I'll reiterate what I just said a moment ago. That's how the quarterback market works. But Trevor has to do more, and perhaps, as Leger points out, Akeem, the fact that the pressure is quote-unquote off makes things a little easier as we get through the offseason and head towards training camp here in a few weeks. But it feels like the Houston Texans are going to be impervious to pressure, in part because of what they have in DeMeco Ryans, in part because of what they have in Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, and obviously what they have in C.J. Stroud. We'll see what it looks like in Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson coming back, if he can stay healthy, and of course what Will Levis can do in year 2 with a new coaching staff there. But I still think the Jaguars are going to feel a little pressure, especially get off to a slow start. But again, you got your franchise quarterback. There should be no more excuses.
5 years, $275 million contract extension, $200 million guaranteed for Trevor Lawrence in Duval County. Leger Douzable, Ryan Wilson, break it down for us here on CBS Sports HQ. Men, thank you. And look, Trevor Lawrence is their guy. As you take a look where he ranks in Jaguars history in wins, passing yards, and passing touchdowns, top 5 all time. And this deal will pay him an average of $55 million per year, tying Joe Burrow for the most in NFL history.